Recording in progress.
Good evening. This is, we want to make sure, hold on, I got it back. Yeah. Okay. Good evening. This is we have sort of two meetings going on tonight. The first meeting we have is with the Hayward Geological Hazard Abatement District, often referred to as the GAD. The GAD is a great place to be when you're not having fun. Only fun happens at the GAD, right?
Yes.
So what I'd like to do is call the meeting to order. And I am the GAD chair. I have the honor and the privilege of not only being the mayor of the city of Hayward, but I'm also the GAD chair. So welcome to tonight's meeting, everybody. And what I'd like to ask first is Ms. Morrison, the GAD clerk, if you can take roll call.
I would be happy to.
Well, actually, hold on a second. Before I do that, we have to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And I would, yes, thank you very much. And Mayor Pro Tem Andrews, if you can also do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Everyone stand if you are able to.
Thank you. And Ms. Morrison, who is also the clerk, could you please take roll, please?
I will. Good evening, everyone. Chair Salinas.
Present.
Vice Chair Andrews.
Present.
Board Member Bonilla.
Present.
Board Member Goldstein.
Present.
Board Member Roche.
Here.
Board Member Sirop.
Present.
And Board Member Zermanio.
I'm here.
Thank you very much. All present.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. I'd like to ask for public comments, and this is reserved for anybody who would like to make a public comment to the GAD board on something that is on the agenda or is not on the agenda. Is there anybody online or in the audience that would like to make a public comment to the GAD board? I don't see anybody in the audience, and I do not see anybody online, so I would like to close public comments and move on to consent item number 1. And I believe Ms. Ralston will kick this off.
For the minutes, Chair? That's the consent item, correct?
Yes, so if there's no public comment on the consent calendar, we can entertain a motion
Yes.
to approve the consent calendar.
Moved by Council, Board Member Bonilla has a question.
Thank you. I'm fine with the meeting minutes, but we probably just need to correct the time the meeting adjourned because it says it started at 7 and adjourned at 6:40.
Okay, that would have been the shortest meeting in history.
Board Member Roach.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the minutes also because we obviously weren't here. 4 of us weren't. So do we abstain? And then that wouldn't give us a...
You can abstain or you can vote.
Okay.
Or
even though we weren't here for the meeting.
even though you weren't here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you can decide. Yeah. Okay, so the item number 1 has been moved by GAD member Bonilla. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by member Roach. And Madam Clerk Morrison, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Chair Salinas.
Yes.
Vice Chair Andrews.
Yes.
Board Member Bonilla.
Yes.
Bonilla, yes. Board Member Goldstein.
Yes.
Goldstein, yes. Board Member Roche.
Yes.
Roche, yes. Board Member Sirop.
Yes.
Sirop, yes. And Board Member Zermanio.
Gee.
Zermanio, yes.
Thank you. Next, we move to public hearing. We have 2 items on the public hearing. The first item is a resolution approving the Geologic Hazard Abatement District budget for the fiscal year 2023-24 and suspending the levy of the assessment for the reserve development for fiscal year 2023-2024. And I believe Ms. Ralston will kick this off.
Yes. Good evening, board members. I am Haley Ralston with NGO Incorporated, who serves as the GAD manager for the Hayward GAD. And with us this evening, we have Bob Boucher, who is also with NGO Incorporated, serves as the GAD manager. And we have Dave Fernandez, who is with GAD Treasurer Inc. and serves as the GAD treasurer. And as you have met already, Ms. Morrison is the GAD clerk and GAD attorney. So tonight before the board, we have the annual budget for the Hayward GAD for fiscal year 2023-2024. And I have provided a presentation here on your screen, not included in your packet, but on your screen to follow along. So there are 3 developments within the Hayward GAD: the reserve development, the hideaway development, and the Hayward SOMI development. The reserve development was the first development in the Hayward GAD and formed the Hayward GAD in 2016. And there are 179 residences within the reserve development. And in fiscal year 22-23, all of them were subject to the levy of the assessment. And the assessment limit for the residences within the reserve were $1,866.14 per residential unit within the reserve development. However, the board did authorize a suspension of the levy for the reserve development only during fiscal year 2022-2023 due to the reserve account balance being slightly above target, the original target set for the GAD, which we can discuss and we'll go into some more detail in a little bit. So in general, the engineer's report provides a basis for the budget, and the revenue stream is divided into operations and reserve accumulation. And then this annual budget provides for short-term and long-term costs, so maintenance and operations with a little bit going towards capital improvements and reserve accumulation. So as mentioned, the second development is the hideaway development within the GAD, which includes 59 residences, and their assessment for fiscal year 22-23 was $1,076.91 per residential unit. And currently, the hideaway development is still under developer responsibility, as plan and control responsibilities for the GAD have not been transferred to the GAD yet. We did just perform the first punch list walk with the developer for GAD maintained items in February. So they have that punch list and we'll be working through those items. The hideaway development will be eligible for transfer to the GAD in December of this year. So once the developer has verified that they have completed the GAD punch list items, we will do another site visit to confirm those items were addressed properly, and then we will bring those items or those parcels to the board for transfer and acceptance. Then the third development, Hayward SOMI, is a total of 189 residences. 43 were subject to the levy in fiscal year 22-23, and we estimate that to increase to 57 residences in 23-24. The assessment for the Hayward SOMI units for fiscal year 22-23 was $605.55 per townhome and $484.87 per condo unit. This development was recently transferred to the GAD annexed into the GAD in 2022, and therefore will not be eligible for transfer until 2025. And for fiscal year 2023, let me back up a little bit, I apologize. For the reserve development, the assessment limit is estimated to raise to $1,959.45. And then for the Hayward SOMI development, it is estimated to raise to $635.83 for the townhome units and $509.11 for the condos. And then for the hideaway development, the assessment limit is estimated to increase to $1,130.75. The increases are based on CPI every year, and the final CPI for each of these developments is based on a June to June cycle, and those June numbers will come out in July, so it's a current estimate based on what we're seeing of inflation tracking right now. So tonight before the board, action being considered is to accept the Hayward GAD budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 and suspend the levy of the GAD assessment for the residential units within the GAD reserve development only. So here is a summary of the budget for fiscal year 2023-24. We estimate expenses to be $162,125 as broken down as follows. $114,000 going towards preventative maintenance and operations such as ditch cleaning, weed abatement, minor response to erosion, also detention basin clearing, administration and accounting services at about $28,000, and then additional outside professional services to support the GAD is at a little under $19,000. So the reserve summary estimated for fiscal year 2023-2024 anticipates a revenue of $135,000 with an estimated decrease to the reserve fund of $26,830. Outlined below is what the estimated reserve is to be at the end of this fiscal year, and given the anticipated revenue in the next fiscal year and investment income projected, and then taking into account the expenses proposed for the next fiscal year, we come to an amount of $972,905 at the end of fiscal year 23-24 for the GAD reserve account. So as I mentioned earlier about suspension of the levies, since with the suspension of the levy and receiving less assessment income and expenses being larger than the income coming in, it is, with the expenses projected for this next fiscal year, we are trending to where by the end of the fiscal year, the reserve account balance will slightly dip below the target. And so with that, and that assumes that the complete budget is spent, not, there may be items that may not be spent, such as emergency response if we have a good winter. And so we are continuing to recommend the suspension of the levy for the Hayward, or the reserve development only for fiscal year 23-24. However, we do recommend considering reinstating the assessment at the assessment limit or some level below in fiscal year 2024-25, and that will be brought to the board next year for consideration after analysis of the reserve account then. So assessment levies for the Hideaway and Hayward Somi developments will continue to be opposed at the assessment limits. So here is a graph of the account balance. So as I mentioned, that dip in the end of the orangish color there is where we're projecting it to dip below the target. That is the blue line shown. So that is why we're recommending suspension of the levy for the reserve development this fiscal year, and then consider reinstating the limit or some levy below in the next fiscal year. So GAD outlook, as I mentioned, the Hideaway development is eligible for transfer in December of this year, and we'll be working with the developer to complete that and bring that back to the board when ready. Hayward Somi development is still continuing to pull building permits for units as they're slowly starting to develop that site. We know of other developments in Hayward that have been conditioned by the city of Hayward to annex into the Hayward GAD, so those are on our radar and working with those projects as they progress. And then we have had previous conversations with the city of Hayward about potential hard parcels annexing into the Hayward GAD as well. And I'll also report that with the heavy rains this last winter, the Hayward GAD sites, at least the areas that the GAD was responsible for, performed well. We didn't have any homeowner calls or emergency responses. We do have some erosion that we need to address on a maintenance road, but everything else did really well. So again, tonight we recommend that the board approve the Hayward GAD budget for 2023-2024 fiscal year and suspend the levy of the GAD assessment for the reserve development only in 2023-2024. And we're available for any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. I'd like to first call up here and see if any of my fellow directors have any questions. Council member, or hold on, let me go to my Director Roach.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask because I'm new to this, so just curious. Is the levy on top of property taxes?
Correct. So the assessments are supplemental real property taxes.
And how is it based on the property value? Is it like what's the
No.
calculation?
It's based on the special benefit that the parcels receive, the residents receive, based on the geologic hazards within the development.
Okay. And I was just wondering, just in the city that are there other hillside neighborhoods that aren't part of the GAD? So would they come in, or are they just taken care of on a?
So there is an option that existing developments can annex into a GAD. It's a different process, and it does require a vote of the community to approve the assessment, so that can be challenging at times. However, most of the time, if there is open space that is not within a GAD, usually it's HOA owned or it's private property, which I know is similar, but either private residential property or HOA, and HOAs are responsible for those properties.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Goldstein.
Thank you, Chair. Why suspend the levy rather than tapering it?
Sure. We recommended suspension last year due to how the reserve account was trending a significant amount above. However, the reserve development being 159 units is a lot of units contributing to the assessment, and the Hayward SOMI development is coming on slightly slower than anticipated as well, so that's where we're kind of seeing a little bit of that dip there. But that's why we wanted to suspend, was just to trend a little bit more closely or exactly as projected over the long term.
So I'm asking a slightly different question, which is why suspend it rather than taper it? My concern would be, as a homeowner, I would see that amount suddenly is not being collected, and then next year it suddenly is, and it looks like I'm, because I'm very forgetful. Not me personally, I think people generally, but they would see that $1,800 or $1,900 bill all of a sudden. Wouldn't it be more, palatable if instead of suspending it for a year, we simply adjusted it to taper off some? So maybe reduce it by $400 over a period of years?
Yes, that can definitely be done and presented to the board, whether that be this fiscal year or for the next one, as we're mentioning. I think that's why we mentioned the suspension, was to bring it closer to the target. However, in this next fiscal year, we could do something that may not be the limit. If some levy below the limit could bring us still back on the target line. Does that help? Okay. We would be in agreement with tapering, to say we don't necessarily say it has to be a complete suspension. It can be a levy lower.
Thank you. Director Bonilla.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. As I was looking at kind of the administration cost, which are relatively low. I mean, $28,000 isn't bad. Does that just cover the cost of the GAD manager? Because it says administration, but is that just the GAD manager contract cost or something?
Yeah. So in the budget provided in the packet as well, under the administration and accounting section, it shows what items are included in that. So it is GAD manager, but it's also GAD attorney, GAD clerk, GAD treasurer, assessment role, levy prep.
I think that's an outside. So there's a category that says administration for $28,000, and then there's the outside services on page 6. Page 6 has all those things: the attorney, the treasurer, the clerk. I was just wondering, the $23,000 in administration on page 6, is that specifically for the GAD manager? Or 21,000.
Sorry, one moment. Oh, yes, that is the, our GAD manager, and then also annual budget and report preparation.
Perfect. Got it. And then, I'm fine with, kind of suspending, or is what one of my fellow board members said, tapering. But when I looked at the reserve, I'm like, that's almost, we almost have $1 million in reserve. We're running at a run rate of 162,000 a year. The reserves seem pretty healthy. I mean, if more organizations had 5 or 6 years of reserves, we'd be in a better place. So I think you guys are doing great with, this budget and the way that you guys are not only, allocating the budget, but then also being mindful about making sure that we have the right reserves in place too. So thanks for that.
Great, thank you. Yes, we understand how costly earthwork repairs can be in emergency response. There's other GADs we're involved with this season who had quite a significant amount of failures that they'll be responding to in this next season. And yes, that's why we want to make sure there's enough in reserves for those rainy days.
Excellent. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Director Roach.
I just wanted to add really quick. I did have the same thought as Director Goldstein about that I know for me, like if all of a sudden it was missing, if I didn't have to pay $1,000, I would get used to that and comfortable. And so then it would be a shock to bring back. So I think some proposal for tapering might be, or, some reduced amount instead of a complete suspension, even though at the same time, I mean, if they don't need to be paying into it because there's plenty of reserves, like I can see why. Maybe there needs to just be some education to the homeowners about what's happening, that don't, to be prepared, this will go up again next year. Maybe that would solve it. Some of them are paying money just for the sake of the habit.
Sure, and we've provided flyers to this GAD before, and we would be open to doing that again. We have been authorized by the board in the past to do an annual flyer as such, and so we can do that with information about the GAD assessment, specifically for the reserve development and how it may change and such.
And Director Bonilla promised that this question would be very, very short.
Yes, and it's not a question, it's more of a comment, which is, I would be more in favor of suspending it and then tapering the turning back on of it. So, I mean, everyone can save $1,000, right? But maybe the next year, 500 and then 800 and then back up to the 1,000, versus, because we don't need to collect more money in this reserve. It's healthy enough, right? Our residents can take the $1,000 from my view. They would appreciate it. Turning it back on slowly, I think, is a better, what I would prefer is the approach. But I would love to hear from the rest of you guys when the time is right.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to now move to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience or online that would like to make a public comment on the item? Seeing none, I'd like to close public comment, and I'll entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
I'll also move the approval of this budget and the suspension of the levy of the assessment for the reserve development.
Moved by moved by Director Bonilla with I don't know if is it called an amendment or with the recommendation?
Why don't we see if we have a second, and then
Okay,
if somebody
thank you.
may wish to entertain an amendment.
Thank you,
to the
Ms.
main motion?
Morris. Morrison. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Director Bonilla, seconded by Director Syrup, and I have a question here by Director Roach.
I'm in support of the amendment, but because we just had this discussion about suspension versus tapering, or suspension with tapering added on, if we approve this, then we're just approving suspension without any language to do with tapering. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so would the maker of the motion accept a friendly amendment to add with tapering as we turn it back on afterwards? And what that language looked like?
I mean, is that needed? This is only a one-year budget we're approving. So, I mean, if we're approving the suspension, when this comes back for 2024, 2025, we can accept
Okay.
that. No.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Correct. We could plan to bring back a tapering or a levy less than the limit
To come
next
back.
year based on the reserve balance.
Thank
That'd
you.
be great.
All right, I remove my friendly.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that clarification. And Ms. Morrison, you can take roll now.
Sure. Okay. Let's see. Chair Salinas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Andrews.
Second.
Andrews, yes. Bonilla.
Yes.
Bonilla, yes. Director Goldstein.
Yes.
Goldstein, yes. Director Roche.
Yes.
Director Roche, yes. Director Syrop.
Syrop, yes.
Syrop,
Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you. Syrop, yes. And Director Zermanio.
Aye.
Zermanio, yes.
And as Director Andrews just found out, the GAD will get you every time.
I think it just threw me off the names and I'm just thrown off.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it passes unanimously. I'll move on to item number 3. And item number 3 is resolutions 23-02 and 23-03, authorizing an agreement for GAD manager services between NGO Incorporated and the Hayward Geological Hazard Abatement District, the GAD, and for GAD attorney and clerk services between Fenimore, Wendell, and the GAD. And I believe our Ms. Ralston and Ms. Morrison is going to kick this off.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So tonight before the board are 2 resolutions with the staff report. As Chair Salinas just described. So the Hayward GAD was formed in 2016 with Resolution 16. Let me back up. The Hayward GAD was formed by Hayward City Council on March 1st, 2016 with Resolution 16030 and appointed NGO Incorporated to serve as the GAD manager, Wendell Rosen to serve as the GAD clerk, and Wendell Rosen to serve as the GAD attorney. Public Resources Code 26584 for GAD law says that the GAD Board of Directors must appoint a clerk and a treasurer, but also in Public Resources Code 26586 says that the GAD Board of Directors may also appoint other staff as needed, such as GAD manager and GAD attorney, as this GAD has. In June of 2022, Wendell Rosen combined with the law firm Fenmore and became Fenmore Wendell. The attorneys at Wendell Rosen serving as the GAD clerk and attorney previously are still serving as the GAD clerk and attorney at Fenmore Wendell. So it is recommended that the board affirm the continued legal and clerk services of the attorneys now at Fenmore Wendell and also GAD manager services with NGO Incorporated. The GAD attorney has prepared and reviewed the agreements presented in resolutions 2302 and 2303. We're available for any questions the board may have on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston, and I'd like to open up for questions from the GAD directors. Director Roach.
I was just going to move the item. but
I
if-
first have to go through
sorry.
the process.
Sorry, okay.
You know, you can't rush the GAD. Please don't rush the GAD. Any other questions from councilmen or from directors? Seeing none, I'd like to close questions from the directors, open up for public comment. Is there anybody online or in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Seeing none and seeing none online, I'd like to close public comment, and I'd like to return to the directors, and I believe Director Roach is dying to say something.
I would like to move the item.
Second.
Moved by Director Roach, seconded by Director Goldstein. And Ms. Morrison, if you can please take the roll.
Yes, and this is to approve Resolution 23-2 and 2303. I'll start off with Chair Salinas.
Yes.
Salinas, yes. Vice Chair Andrews.
Yes.
Andrews, yes. Director Bonilla.
Yes.
Bonilla, yes. Goldstein.
Yes.
Goldstein, yes. Director Roche.
Yes.
Roche, yes. Sirop.
Yes.
Sirop, yes. And Director Zermano.
Yes.
Zermano, yes. Motion
And-
carries.
Thank you, and it unanimously carries. Next, I'd like to move on to the GAD Manager's Report. And Ms. Ralston, do you have a thorough report that you can give to us tonight?
I believe I provided most of my updates during the annual budget review and annual update there, but available for any additional questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions by the GAD Board to the General Manager? Director Syrup.
Just a brief request for maybe a summary of GAD events since its inception for the newer council members. This is our first GAD meeting for many of us, and it would just be helpful to have that context. Thank you.
Yes, actually, I should mention that. We would be happy to meet with any of the new board members, whether it be one-on-one or two-on-one or such, just to provide a little history of the GAD and information about GADs in general.
That was a good question. Yeah, that was perfect. Good. So thank you. Thank you for that offer. And then Director Bonilla.
Thank you. When we see this budget next year, can we just get a comparison maybe of year over year so we know if it's trending up, trending down, or if it's holding pretty flat?
Sure.
Thank you.
Director Roach.
Thank you. I was just curious, I meant to ask this earlier, but back in the minutes from last time, there was a request to have a resident member, someone at large or advisory, and I was just wondering what the history of that was.
Yes, before we've had requests from residences within the Hayward GAD to be serving on the GAD board. However, GAD law only allows 2 options for GAD boards when the GAD is first formed, and that is either the local formation agency that formed the GAD to serve separately as the GAD board, or to do a completely property owner board of residences within the development. And once established, that cannot be changed. However, other GADs have before, and if this board would like, could do a subcommittee or could work with, we work with the HOA and residences often as they're contacting us directly and we're trying to answer their questions as best as we can. But as far as serving on the board, they're limited in that way.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know what the history was. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions for Ms. Ralston, I'd like to next open it up for GAD board members' reports, referrals, and future agenda items. Seeing none, I'd like to close that item and move on to next meeting. And unfortunately, there are no future meetings are scheduled. All future meetings will be noticed. So thank you very much for everything. And did you have your hand up?
I was just going to comment that the next anticipated meeting we have would likely be after December for transfer if Hideaway is ready for then. If not, then it will likely be the annual budget meeting and report next year.
Thank you. And although I spoke with some comedy, I know this is a very serious item, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
So, meeting adjourned. So we'll take a 3-minute break, and so we can transition to the next group. I'd like to call the Hayward City Council meeting to order. It's May 23, 2023, and I'd like to start off by asking our city attorney if you could give a closed session announcement.
Greetings, Mayor and Council. At 5, the Council convened in closed session. There were 3 items on the closed session agenda. And with all members present, with one public speaker who spoke on a topic not related to any of the agenda items. 1, the Council conferred with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation. Please refer to the posted agenda for details. The Council took no reported action. Secondly, the Council conferred with legal counsel over pending litigation. Please refer to the posted agenda for the title of the case. The Council took no reportable action. Finally, the Council continued its annual evaluation of the city attorney. The mayor might want to make some comments about that. And I will defer to the mayor for making that report.
I appreciate it. We did have a closed session. Council did discuss the city attorney's evaluation. There was no decision made and there was no vote taken. Thank you. Next, I'd like to move on to a special presentation. And before I read the proclamation, I first wanted to welcome to City Hall and to the City Council chambers Ann Nguyen from Mi Fa Soul, the youth Vietnamese music group, Vijaya Asuri from the Association of Indo-Americans, Victor Fuji from the Eden chapter of the Japanese American Citizens League, Lonnie Lamido from the Filipino American Student Coalition, Sam Kim from the Hansamo, a Korean American nonprofit organization serving the Bay Area, and Benjamin Chang and Lily Dang from the Chinese Arts Association of San Francisco. So if we can all give them a big round of applause. Thank you for being here. I have a proclamation. Councilmember Syrup will hold it up as I read it, and then Councilmember Syrup and I will join all of you down there. We'll take a group picture, and then we'll have each group make a few words. So thank you for participating this evening here at City Hall. So, proclamation. Whereas May is Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, a time designated by the U.S. Congress to celebrate Asian people from the continent of Asia and the Pacific Islands of Malaysia, Micro-Indonesia, and Polynesia, and to recognize their immense and significant contributions to our national identity, culture, and well-being. And whereas Hayward is home to people from all parts of Asia, with more than 25% of our population having roots on the Asian continent or Pacific Islands, and whereas Hayward enjoys and benefits from its strong relationship with 3 Asian cities, Funabashi, Japan, Ghaznia, Afghanistan, and Yixing, China, and has exchanged gifts, visits, and warm friendships with all of them. And whereas Asian Americans and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders serve as leaders, innovators, and creators of all aspects of our society, including business, education, arts, culture, entertainment, and government, and are credited with many significant accomplishments and achievements. And whereas Hayward has made a commitment to being an inclusive, equitable, and compassionate community that recognizes and honors the cultures, customs, and celebrations of our members, and believes It is vital to the health and well-being of all community members that we build a relationship of trust between our immigrant communities and the local public agencies that are entrusted with public safety. And whereas be it resolved that we renew our commitment to honor our Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community by recognizing May as Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and to protect their health and safety by condemning and opposing acts and expression of hatred against them. And now, therefore, I, Mark Salinas, Mayor of the City of Hayward, on behalf of the Hayward City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Congratulations. How are you? Good.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Lily?
And then who else?
Yeah.
Is it yours? Oh, of course. I apologize. There you go. And I have two more.
Did we get all our groups? Yeah. This is a group. Yeah, this is a big group. You got, okay.
Okay, did everyone get one? We have extras. Okay, so let's all sort of huddle up and then George, yeah, you hold that open. And then bring the kids right here in the front.
Come in the middle.
Okay, come over here. Come over here. Perfect. Okay. You can hold this up too. I'll just smile.
I think somebody has it.
Yeah. Okay, and then if each group can take a minute or 30 seconds and say something. Take as long as you want. Okay. Thank you.
Where would you like us to go? This way?
Present. Okay. Honorable Mayor and respected council members, thank you so much. It's a great honor. On behalf of Association of Indo-Americans, I'm really honored to accept this. And the Association of Indo-Americans is a very unique conglomeration of 42 plus Indian organizations. We all got together 7 years back to celebrate events in our own communities, but we join hands to celebrate Indian events together. So we all represent different states and also different charitable organizations, but we join hands together to celebrate our Independence Day, our colorful festival Holi, our Dashera Diwali Dhamaka, and we spread it out in different cities. We do one in San Ramon, one in Milpitas, one in downtown San Jose, and one in Pleasanton. Hoping to really looking forward to join hands with the city of Hayward, and I heard it's a wonderful, diverse city. because I live in Fremont, and hoping to host huge events. Our events draw anywhere between 20 to 40,000 people in audience. So I'm really hoping to work with all of you. And me personally, I've been here for the last 34 years working for Wells Fargo Bank and also working for the community. Thank you so much.
Good evening, and I really appreciate this recognition from dear Mayor and Council Member. We're representing in Chinese Art Association, which we currently have that art exhibition down at the art hall. And it's such a privilege and honor to be here. And our president, Benjamin, was passing out is our annual member album that we do like every 2 years. And it's our association is 40-year-old, and it's nonprofit. And the reason for me to start volunteer on this, everybody is volunteer basis. And I just realized the importance to recognize where you come from, who I am. And the art has a unique language, can work as a bridge to overcross different cultures, because humans share exactly the same emotions and experience. So I really want to take time to thank you one more time. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lani Lumido. I just want to say I know Hayward by heart, much more the HUSD. So I'm the member and founder of the Hayward Filipino-American Student Coalition. On behalf of my organization, I would like to say thank you so much for this proclamation, and may this piece, a valuable piece of proclamation, transform into a more equitable and inclusive opportunities for the AAPI students of Hayward and the Hayward Unified School District as well. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha Tran. I am 14 years old. I am a freshman in high school. I'm honored to be here today to share my opinions and be the voice of a third-generation Vietnamese American. I'm a student and I'm an active performer, and I'm grateful to all the organizations that have helped my group and I perform around the Bay Area, and for letting me show Vietnamese culture to the world. As the younger generation, I believe that we have a responsibility to learn and preserve our culture. And as Whitney Houston would say, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. As a young activist, I try my best to stand up for the right thing, to show that Asians aren't just quiet and reserved, but that we can also be strong and we can be loud. Even though AAPI Heritage Month is an annual celebration that recognizes the historical and cultural contributions of Asian communities, we also want to reflect on the hardships that we have to cope on the daily, the persistent racism, harassment, and hate crimes against our Asian community as a whole. I was born in the US as a Vietnamese American, and I was raised in a loving household, went to school, and have done many extracurricular activities as any normal kid would. Despite this, racism and discrimination still affect me, and I haven't done anything wrong to provoke bullies, yet sometimes I still get comments every once in a while. The most prominent case of racism that I remember was when COVID-19 had just started, and I was made fun of for being Asian, and people would avoid me because they'd say I'd have corona. So discrimination has taught me to stand up for myself and to fight for what is right. Even though I don't experience the same level of discrimination as many other Asian Americans, that won't stop me from fighting for equality. In conclusion, our goal is not to only celebrate AAPI Heritage Month, but also to find and to discuss and share effective ways to further prevent discrimination, harassment, bullying, and hate crimes against AAPI individuals. Today, I'm very happy that our AAPI community can have a voice and that we are being listened to. I'm relieved that we can take this step, and I hope that our AAPI community can keep on working on what is right. I hope one day we can all be equal. Thank you. Ms.
Tran, Was it Samantha? Yeah. Did you say you were from Hayward High? No. Oh, no, okay. I thought I heard farmer, that's why, okay. Okay. Oh, well, go Farmers.
Go ahead.
This is very spontaneous. I don't really know what to say, but I would like to thank you all for all of your hard work, and I am very honored to be here today. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City Manager McAdoo. My name is Victor Fuji, and I'm honored on behalf of the Eden Township Japanese American Citizens League to accept this proclamation. The Japanese American Citizens League was founded locally in 1936, many years ago by relatives of ours, for civil rights purposes at that time, for the Japanese immigrants primarily. And since then, they've had to endure difficult times during World War II, and as noted by the memorial we have in the Heritage Plaza here, which the City of Hayward, we are very thankful for helping us to do that. And that sort of exemplifies what the City of Hayward is doing now by recognizing the contributions and also the history of the AAPI community in this area. So I thank you very much for that. And I know it's an ongoing thing, but it seems to be in good hands. Thanks very much again.
Hello, this is Sam Kim. I'm honored to represent Korea. I'm from San Ramon, and I'm representing the nonprofit organization named Hansamo, which consists of middle school and high school students in East Bay Area. We're trying to spread out good Korean cultures, such as traditional music, percussion music. Hopefully we can have some chance to perform for you guys later if you have some event later. But yeah, so that's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming here tonight. And Hayward is one of the most diverse cities in the state, and is one of the most diverse cities in this country. And we are this way because of all of the great contributions from all of the communities that live here, particularly the AAPI. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you for your contributions, and have a good night. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to move on to public comment. This is reserved from anybody in the audience or online that would like to make a public comment. And I don't see anybody online. I don't see anybody in the audience that wants to make a public comment. Oh, I do see somebody who wants to make a public comment. Ms. Heather Reyes, coming to us from West Hayward. Ms. Reyes.
Good evening, Mayor Salinas, council members, and staff. To follow a presentation like that, and it's such an honor to be a part of a community that is so diverse. Speaking of diverse, I come before you as a community school specialist. I work at Tyrell Elementary, and I wanted to just come down and say thank you to Councilmember Syrup. He was a judge over at the library. We gave a presentation that we had our first annual spelling bee, probably the first spelling bee for Tyrell Elementary. And the goal of the assistant principal is to eventually make it to Scripps, which is coming up May 31st. But we just want to give a heartfelt thank you to Councilmember Syrup for coming down and being a part of that and making families feel welcome, and the diversity that you saw So I just wanted to give you a little something, if that's okay.
Madam City Manager will, or I should ask the Madam City Attorney or Mr. City Attorney, will Council Member Syrup have to report that?
I don't believe there's cash.
If it's more than $50, right?
Are we ignoring these?
Well, if it's a one-time gift, annually the reporting obligation is what, $580 this calendar year?
I believe so. The city clerk is waving her head, so yes.
If it's worth under $580, then it's not reportable.
Okay, all right.
Our appreciation has no price on it.
I'm still surprised that it was Councilmember Syrup that was asked to be a judge for a spelling bee, but that's okay. That's all right. No, I'm sure he was a great judge. And
Thanks for making us look good, George.
And anytime we can dispatch one of our members for an academic job, we all look good. So thank you very much, and congratulations, Councilmember Syrup. Okay, so I'd like to close public comment and then move on to city manager's comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a few comments. Following up on last week's comment regarding the spring compost giveaway, we did hold that on May 20th at the SkyWest property near the airport, and a record 5,000 bags of compost were distributed. Each household received between 4 to 6 bags of compost. It was a very popular event, and as such generated more interest than anticipated, which caused some long queuing and wait times. And so staff is looking at, we're going to be distributing another 5,000 bags in the fall at an event, and we'll be looking to make some adjustments and changes to the queuing and how that process works. So we got some feedback about that and appreciate that feedback, and so we'll be making some adjustments. Secondly, and lastly, just wanted to let everyone know the Downtown Library will be hosting a special music performance this Saturday, May 27th, celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Mi Fa Sol Youth Vietnamese Music Troupe will perform traditional and modern Vietnamese songs, and the California Youth Chinese Symphony will play traditional Chinese instruments. Program will be in the central foyer and will be held from 11:30 a.m. to 12:15 p.m., and all are welcome. So those are my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. I'd like to move on now to action items and to consent items. And are there any items from the consent calendar you'd like to pull? Councilmember Syrup.
I just want to ask 2 questions on 5 and 6, but otherwise I'm happy to move them once my questions are addressed.
Okay, go ahead and ask 5 and 6.
Thank you. So for the YFSB services, is this 5 that I'm looking at? I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong. The action item that has to do with providing mental health services through YFSB in the school system. Right now, we're currently providing that to 4 schools, and I'm incredibly pleased with the progress and the support that's being provided. I was curious if there's plans to expand that program. And yeah, just generally, how are we looking at building out more counseling services across more campuses?
So Emily Young, our Youth and Family Services Bureau Administrator, is on. I think a lot of that has to do with funding. We do receive funding from the school district to provide those services, but I will, if she wants to make any further comments about how we could expand. Emily, if you're there, I know. Okay, great.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. I've never participated by webinar before. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Yeah, so it is mostly related to funding. We have consolidated our services over the last year so that we're providing the same number of FTE or hours, but we're providing them more concentratedly in 4 schools. And it's because HOSD has been able to add some of their own counselors to expand services. And so we're providing them a little bit differently to go deeper with the schools that we are serving. We have added interns, which is one way that we can add services without funding and positions. And so we're, recruiting our interns for next year, and we'll plan to do that again. And we're always open to new funding opportunities, new partnerships, and leveraging the resources that we do have to expand that, because we think it's really valuable. But again, at the end of the day, we can provide the services that we have people to provide, and we would all love to grow and provide more.
Great. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in this arena. I'm happy to move that item with the rest of them. And then my second question was about the ARPA funds being allocated for the shallow rent subsidy program. I just was wondering what sub-tranche that was coming from. I know we had $3 million for housing-related projects. We allocated a specific amount for social impact bonds, $500,000 to $1 million for legal resources or legal assistance. Where is this 1.5 coming from?
And we've got Community Services Manager Jessica Lobodon and Management Analyst Amy Cole on that can answer that question for us.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The allocation for the shallow subsidy program is coming from the ARPA funds allocated to homelessness, which was identified through the Let's House Hayward Homelessness Reduction Strategic Plan as one of the practices to fund through the use of these one-time dollars.
Thank you. And then I saw that around 26 families were supported with the first pilot of this program. Is this total not to exceed amount of 1.5 million looking to be approximately 75 families? Do we have a rough idea of how many people we're supporting with this?
I can address that one. And yes, so the rough range will be between 25 to 75 households. With some flex depending on if folks need a subsidy for less time.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm happy to move the items 1 through 9.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Syrup.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember, oh wait, hold on. Seconded by Councilmember Goldstein, and then we have a question by Councilmember Bonilla.
More just comments. I was going to second, but I appreciate Councilmember Goldstein doing that. I'm excited to see this airport hangar, come into fruition. $40,000 in annual rent, I think, is, it could be used in this city, and I also appreciate the economic impact of travelers that are staying in our hotels and restaurants. I took a tour of the airport recently. Doug and Pamela gave it to me, and it was just great to see the world-class operation that's operated there. So it's good to see us expanding and getting this new hangar and office center there. But to Councilmember Syrup's earlier point, I think it's important as we continue to expand the airport, we make sure that we understand the effects on the local community, especially as it relates to pollution or other type of hazardous things that come from those airplanes flying in and out of our city. Consent item 6, I was also excited to see the $1 million, added to the shallow rent subsidy program. That was something that I put my red dot on, so it's good to see, that moving forward. And then I was also pleased to see number 7 and the work that we're doing to not only keep our navigation center running through the supportive backs, but also to negotiate and execute the purchase of 4 teeny homes with Ruby's Place. So these are just really good things that oftentimes I think our consent calendar, doesn't highlight the great impact that these items are making in our community. So I just wanted to kind of call that out before we move directly to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So moved by Councilmember Syrup, seconded by Councilmember Goldstein. And Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Sí.
Mayor Salinas?
Yes, and unanimously passes. Thank you. So next, I'd like to move on to item number 10, and this is the strategic roadmap. Review and discuss revisions to the city's strategic roadmap. And I believe City Manager McAdoo is going to kick this off and go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and we are pleased to be back this evening before you to talk about some of the edits and changes that came out of the work session we held a couple weeks ago on the strategic roadmap. I'm going to relatively quickly turn it over to our outstanding assistant to the city manager, Mary Thomas, who's going to walk us through the staff report. But just wanted to let the council know that tonight we'll be making these final edits, and then based on the recommendations from this evening, That will be incorporated into our final strategic roadmap document, which will be brought back for adoption on June 6th with the annual budget. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
Great, thank you, Kelly. And I will, great, the slides are up. Thank you both are. So we can advance to the next slide, or I can do that. There we go. I'm in charge. So the first thing, and first of all, also I want to repeat what Kelly just said. This is a much faster timeline than we typically would like to do with this, and so we appreciate your sort of flexibility and patience as we go really quickly through the process. And next year we'll begin much earlier so that you can, have several times to iterate and provide us feedback. But we are looking for your sort of final feedback tonight if that's possible. So first of all, the vision statement that you guys provided feedback on 2 weeks ago, we did incorporate some wording edits to the full statement, and that was in your packet. In addition, several of you mentioned that it would be nice to have a shorter statement, and so here's a couple of options that either could be, and tonight's a work session, we're not asking you to take a vote on anything, just your direction. So either incorporate one of these two options at the beginning of the longer one, or if you want to just forego the longer one and go with a shorter one, we're totally open to that too. So I can go back to this slide if you need to look at it, but I'm going to move on. For the education city lens, this also we there wasn't unanimous, I would say, agreement that we heard from council in the last session, but it seemed like there was majority support for considering incorporating this lens. We did make some changes to the language to one, focus both on community partners as well as educational partners. Some of you had mentioned businesses and other partners, as well as reiterate that we are not providing necessarily in many of these cases, but we are partnering to provide these services. So we're looking tonight for you to sort of reaffirm if you're comfortable with this approach and if you're comfortable with this language being put into the plan. Next slide. So we reached out to the staff. This was a very quick turnaround. We had about a week to do this. We reached out to the staff for each of these projects and showed them the votes, the tallies that you guys had provided at the dot voting exercise, and then had them look at by division kind of what their staff capacity was to work on each project. We haven't actually provided this sort of data in the past by division, so I felt it was actually a really useful exercise for staff. They appreciated the opportunity to try to break it out, and so we then made some comments and some decisions about timelines for each of the projects based on that feedback. So I'm just providing a sample screenshot here, but we had that pretty long attachment for you that you could have gone through. As you'll notice, we are actually suggesting working on most of the projects. We're not able to fully punt on many projects till next year. However, your dot voting was very useful in that we were either able to reduce, sort of say, we're going to start this project because we have to for legal reasons or for other reasons, but we're going to not spend as much effort on it this year, and we'll do more effort next year because you said it was a lower priority. And anything that got a higher score, sort of the top third scores, we're making sure that we are moving on that project this year. In some cases fully, we'll complete the projects. In other cases, we're just getting them started for the following year. So tonight, what we're looking for is a confirmation that our timelines are heading in the right direction. So we did go through council's prioritization, and there were 5 areas where we felt these were sort of new council projects, with the exception of the broadband. The rest of them were council-added projects, and so we felt that we needed to ask for some money in order to make these happen in the coming fiscal year. So for each of these items tonight, we're sort of seeking direction from council on if you want to have this added to the budget, which would appear on June 6th for this coming year, or if your preference is to kind of hear more information about this project this coming year and maybe revisit this at mid-year or at next budget. So these are the 5 ones that we would need funding for. And so we did, and we heard some comments from you guys at the retreat. We appreciate them. Staff agrees with many of the things you said. So a few things we're going to try and change for next year. One, we will be launching an online tracker by the end of July. We're exploring some softwares we already have, so we don't have to buy new ones, so that we can post that on the website, and you guys can scroll through the different projects. And what we will do is prompt staff to do quarterly updates to that tracker, so that you can just see where all the projects are each quarter. So that'll happen. We will be holding the retreat in much earlier next year, so that we have many more times to come back and forth, and you guys can provide more comments. We will also provide more information about which projects are required versus which ones have flexibility. I think when we came back after your dot votes, we were like, oh, actually, we can't put off most of these projects. A lot of them are required. And so we ourselves, I think, need to be more thoughtful about where we have staff flexibility and where we don't. And then we did notice as we were going through the projects that some of them were more operational in nature versus the special projects. So we'll sort of revisit those and do a better way of splitting those out in the future. And then finally, we have not provided a staff analysis typically in the past. We wanted to right after the first roadmap was adopted, but then COVID hit and we just didn't have capacity. So we're working on some tools for that. We tried to provide some analysis in the staff report, but we will be doing more in the future. So so tonight we're seeking direction on the vision statement, the education city lens, the full the list of projects, any timelines that you might be concerned about. Did we miss anything? And those budget needs. It's a lot, I know, but this is the only item, so.
And I promised the sergeant at arms that we'd be out of here at 8:30. So that means that, we got 15 minutes, but I don't think we're going to get there. Okay. So thank you very much for that, Ms. Thomas. And now I'd like to, since this is a work session, I'd like to first open it up for public comment. Is there anybody online or in the audience that would like to make a public comment? We have TJ from Hayward Concerned Citizens online. So go right ahead and key up when you can.
Hi, Council. I'm TJ with Hayward Concerned Citizens. I just wanted to speak to H1, Support Development of St. Regis Behavioral Health Campus, to provide health and housing services to people experiencing homelessness and mental health crises. So a week or so ago, someone opened up a post on Nextdoor platform about a woman known to police and council members as having mental health issues, who was hanging out on Mission Boulevard, pants down, defecating in public, and not the first occurrence, apparently. On this post, people wrote that they were told by council about this promising mental health facility at St. Regis set to open in a year to help people like this woman. Folks on the post had questions about details on what help this facility could provide. So when will there be a public hearing? And what good are public comments when this question, which I have asked repeatedly, goes unanswered? Our residents have a right to ask for a public hearing or a webinar from council and BACS to share the aspects of this program in the works. I also just want to add more generally that the strategic plan should definitely incorporate the community, not through people's budget projects, but through letting residents talk. Start a quarterly pop-up town hall between council and community for those who prefer not to send emails. That isn't a matter of expense, but a matter of your time. But I know Mayor Salinas had suggested it at one point. I think it's a really wonderful idea. I hope you'll consider this for your future strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'd like to close public comment and then return up here to the dais. And let me check. And I believe Councilmember Zarmeño had his hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for the good report and fast. That was fast and furious, so thank you. That's took a lot of effort. Let's see, question. On the 5 items, I'm fine with the 5 items, but I need to have consultant services explained to me.
Sure, and I'm going back to the slide in case we want to put that back up again. So the consultant services, so that's for the 360 evaluations, which you guys did add as a group, and that was pretty high up. So we don't do those internally. But the nature of those evaluations are we would use an outside firm to come in and conduct the 360 evaluations. And I think this was for department heads, as well as we added some funding in there for some executive coaching as well, based on the feedback from those evaluations.
So, all right. So we did feel it was important. Okay, thank you. Let's see. The vision statement, I like the first option. The second one is too short. And even maybe you can include the first option, then the longer one, kind of like a preamble. Sometimes I see mission and vision. So maybe that's what could be done. The one word that's missing on that very first one is the word green. Something about us being green, something sustainability. We're a very green city, but there's no green in it. So if we can include something about us being green. 27th in the nation in producing our energy. That needs to be stated out there in black and green. And then how can we move Q8, QC22 as a top priority? In my mind, we really need to go after these owners of these empty buildings that have been empty since 1776, and they are really a detriment to our downtown. And it's really downtown where most of them exist. How can we move that to the top, and start getting on this? Start getting our attorney Lawson after these folks one by one. Just pick them up one by one. Boom, boom, boom. And get these places filled. So can that happen?
I will also defer to Kellyanne or Dustin on this one, but this is for the vacant properties. So my understanding, and we can get you more information on this, is that the ordinance that the city currently has in place, which council reviews, it doesn't have a lot of teeth in the enforcement mechanisms, and so we would need to revise the ordinance. And right at this moment, based on all the other ordinances that you can see, or all the other work that our planning division has on our docket, that we would need to replace one of those projects with that one, because revising an ordinance is a lot of work.
So you tell me we have to wait another 3 years before we do something for these folks, like the guy next to the cookie stick. It is on the roadmap, and it is on for like first thing starting in fiscal year 25. So about a year would be where staff currently has it. If that's something, I think, and again, Kelly, I'll wait for you to weigh in, but I do think that if different subcommittees, so in this case, if you want to provide some feedback to any of the Council Economic Development Committee, if different council subcommittees want to sort of reorder these throughout the year because they do see certain things coming up, I think that could be very appropriate. Yeah, Kelly, if you want to comment. We really need to move on this. I know we have other things that are, if not more important, at least as important, but in my mind, this is priority. Madam City Manager?
Yeah, I think we can, we'll do what we can within the ordinance that we have. But again, it's, the council would have to tell us what would take off and stop doing in order to prioritize this. If the council wants us to update this ordinance, it's a lot of work. And if you want us to put more teeth into it, we'd have to deprioritize something else. We just don't have the staff right now to take that project on. So, you have to look at your colleagues in terms of trying to move that up on the priority list versus looking at us.
So would we need another $300,000 consultant to do this?
We'd have to talk to staff. It's also we have to have a staff member to project manage it, where there's a community engagement piece that we would need to do that would probably need to be coordinated with staff as well. That's an option. So if, you can talk to your colleagues about whether they want to add funding to prioritize that.
But I can't talk to more than two of them. So
well, you can talk to them now in this public meeting and encourage them if you would like them to add it. So we're in a public meeting, so you could advocate now that.
Is this okay with the city attorney? I can talk to him? Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
in a
all
public
right.
meeting, you can
I'm gonna do
turn
that
the
the
other
minute that you're
direction and you can say
All right.
publicly that you would like
All
them to
right.
add funding for a
I'm
consultant.
not going to break any rules or anything.
No, not if you say it publicly in the microphone.
Okay, all right. My dear colleagues, I really think that we really ought to prioritize getting these empty buildings filled. And I think that if we get our city attorney to really tighten up those screws, we can work one-on-one. There are at least 12 empty places in downtown B Street that they need to be filled. So $300,000 is nothing. So I encourage you to think about it, and we'll see. Thank you very much. Mary, great job. City manager, excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you. Okay, so I have all kinds of notes over here. Just let me, okay, so for the first question, which is, which version do I like the most? I agree with Councilmember Zermeños. I like option 1 the most. I would actually just go with option 1, but I am also fine, you know, if my colleagues want to keep the longer option 2, that's fine, but I would keep option 1 as sort of the main thing. Vision versus mission, I think, you know, they're two different things, so let's not make the longer one either one of those. But I would say I like option 1 a lot, and I also love the idea of adding something green in there. Okay, am I comfortable with the education city lens? Yes, just perhaps some of the questions at the bottom might need to be reworded. I'm just looking at the second question. How will this service, project, or policy create, support, or expand? And then it says, if so. So it's not really an if so question because it's, you know, how will this? So then it's, you know, after they explain it, then it's, are there ways this could, you know, so maybe just refining those questions one more time. And then the third question, how are we communicating about the educational and economic opportunities both in and around Hayward to Hayward families? What barriers are there for people to access this information or these educational opportunities? I want to kind of make sure that we're understanding both the barriers to them understanding about what the opportunity is and then perhaps the barrier to them actually being involved in the opportunity. But I do support this education city lens, you know, especially as, you know, I got some data points today which just continue to impress me. You know, 64,000 people on any given school day in Hayward are, you know, here for education. That's 42% of our population, you know, preschool through graduate school in Hayward getting educated every day. So I do like and support the education city focus areas. And then am I comfortable with the projects? Well, first off, I do think that, you know, the feedback that council provided has been reflected. But when I went through the project list, on page 2, there's one that said, it's E10, work collaboratively with Hayward educational institutions to streamline and amplify, you know, these partnerships. If we agree to make, you know, to use this lens and to continue to move forward, Hayward forward in this, through this educational city, we might want to reconsider where that sits in the priorities because I think that those partnerships and that collaboration and communication is going to be pivotal to actually realizing the impacts and benefits of us moving to be more of an education city. Okay, so then H4, continue to explore safe parking options along with encampment management. That I want us to also potentially reconsider how we're prioritizing that. It says continue the work that's already been done, but delay any further exploration due to a lack of staffing. I think that's an issue that our community needs to deal with, and we need to make sure that we do have safe parking options, and we do need to make sure that we're enacting encampment management plans and strategies, especially as we see more encampments come up across our city. So I just wasn't too happy to see those two under the line. And then as it relates to Q8 plus QC22, what my colleague Zermeños was mentioning, help me understand the priority again, because if this got 5 red dots, wouldn't that be in the work plan?
Yeah, so in this particular case, this one was just because our economic development staff and our planning staff have so many other high priority projects that this actually was, even though it got 5 dots, it was sort of lower than some other ones. But it does sound, yeah, so it was sort of a back and forth, and they said, well, this is the one that we think, and I really think it is slightly because they did bring an ordinance around, vacancy a couple years ago, or a year, I don't remember the exact timeline, and council did update it at that point and chose not to kind of add some more enforcement, and so I think that's a little bit of the logic behind it.
Got it. Thank you for that. I am happy to see that over a dozen of these projects are already underway. When it said project underway, I was like, great, we're just continuing to move forward in such a good way. Okay, on page 3, under finance, RC5, the public bank, I think in the comments we mean to say in FY24 the staff will begin. Just a little update, it says being. But those, I was actually, to be honest, I was kind of intrigued that this public bank got more support than safe parking options when I totally appreciate the public bank, but I'm like, this safe parking options, I think to me is urgent, and it's something that we need to deal with before it becomes an issue that spirals out of control because we're kicking the can.
Can I just talk a little bit about the safe parking?
Oh, yes, please.
Part of the challenge is we have one of our community services manager, Jessica Lobodon, is leaving next week to take another position with another city. A good promotion for her, sad for us. But it will take us a little bit of time to refill the positions in that division. And then we're also, with the change in the structure and moving housing under development services, adding another analyst, or instead of having a shared analyst, there'll be another analyst. So we're trying to quickly work to fill those positions. Hopefully, if we can get everyone back on board, I think that's where staff was sort of saying we may not have time to do all that we wanted to do this year because we don't know how long it might take us to fill those staff vacancies. So if we are able to, we'll try to move that quickly because we know it's a priority.
Oh, that makes me feel so good, Madam City Manager. Thank you for saying that. Okay, then it says we have 12 positions that are key to the implementation of this strategic roadmap. What can be done to accelerate the recruiting and hiring of those positions?
We're just going to keep trying. I mean, I think we've, for some of the positions, we're rethinking our strategy, using executive recruiter, doing some of that work. But I think it just depends on the position and sort of the market for it. So if we have challenges recruiting, we'll definitely come back to the council and let the council know. The other thing we're looking at is, how do we leverage, say, different types of positions, maybe just sort of temporary staff or consultants that could come on and help do some of the work as well.
Sounds good. One of the methods that I've seen, and I'm sure you guys have thought about it, but I'll just throw it out there anyways, is, sign-on bonuses. Offer someone $50,000 and say that you're locked in for 18 months, and if you leave, you got to pay back that whole amount, whatever. But I'm just thinking, like, there might be ways of incentivizing people to get these jobs. And then as it relates to dipping into, I think this would be our reserve, right? About $700,000 would come out of our reserve. I know that we have a lot that we're looking at financially this year. We're going through labor negotiations. We have this strategic roadmap. We have all kinds of other things that are eating away at this budget and our reserve. So I would, be comfortable moving, but I would love to hear from my colleagues. I would be comfortable, let me say this. I would be comfortable doing a mid-year budget review and reconsidering the gateway sign removal and replacement project, and then the $300,000 for consulting services for broadband. Did I miss any questions? Perfect. Thank you so much.
No,
Those
you
are
got
my
them all.
comments.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mary, for the report, and thank you to all the staff that helped contribute to it. I know a lot of information had to be collected and consolidated quickly, and I was really pleased with how well this was presented and how easy to digest it was. I also really enjoyed seeing how staff interpreted the projects as well, what their capacity would be, what their staffing needs were, and I'm hoping I can dig more into that later too, because I found that really fascinating. To answer some of the questions directly, longer versus shorter vision statement, I like option 1, but I also want to keep the longer one. I'm kind of sentimental about it as I read it, like the city of Hayward starts to materialize in my head, and when it's so short, it feels like almost sterile, and I like that we're painting this grand vision for our city, so if we can, maybe the way, Councilmember Zermeño posed it, mission, vision, I don't know if it neatly falls into that, but I don't know if I'm ready to say goodbye to the long one just yet. Education City, I'm in alignment with Education City. It makes sense. I appreciate the changes that were made to it. I would like to hear from staff in a year if the framework is useful or how the framework can be improved. I really want to dial into this concept, so I don't want to just create it and then let it sit. If there are ways that we can make education more effective as a way of assessing or practicing some of these, the ways in which we approach some of these projects, I'm all for that. As far as the budget requests go, I'm in agreement with Councilmember Bonilla around the gateway sign. I don't know if that's something I'd want to dip into the reserves for, and maybe this is an opportunity for a local service club to contribute, or maybe there's other organizations that might want to pool their resources and maybe have their name on the project if they helped us shape up the entrance to our great city. Litter collection, I'm wondering if there's some work we can do through Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force to help with that as well. I don't know if I want to dip into reserves for that. However, I would disagree in that I do want to prioritize broadband consulting. It's been a huge issue I've heard amongst the business community in the downtown. Just being able to revisit what it would mean to get better infrastructure. I want to begin those conversations sooner rather than later. Maybe it's not fiscal year 24, maybe it's 25, but I'm comfortable setting aside money for that because that to me is key for economic development for any of these businesses downtown is do they have reliable and robust internet? I had a conversation with someone today that mentioned our chamber CEO is dropping Zoom calls. And so what does that mean if our chamber CEO doesn't have a reliable enough internet connection to facilitate a meeting? So that's kind of where my sentiment's coming from. And then, with the money that we're saving from maybe not doing the gateway sign or the litter collection, this is where, some of the projects that have been deprioritized to fiscal year 25, like the safe parking site development, if we're saving I would be comfortable dipping into the reserves a little bit to bring on additional staff for the development of a safe parking site or a consultant to help with assessing how we deal with our vacant buildings. And so to your point, Councilmember Zermeño, I'm supportive of wanting to prioritize activating these vacant buildings. Maybe we do that in the form of a referral once we've gotten some more feedback from staff. I don't know if I just want to kind of shoot from the hip and say $300,000 on the table right now and we're going to do it. So hopefully you're amenable to that, but I do want to communicate to the staff that I would like to see this prioritized as well. As far as the specific projects go, there's a few points of feedback that you had mentioned about how the process might change, Mary. It was projects versus operational improvements and process updates. I really liked being able to speak to process updates and ops improvements. And one of our priorities is strengthening organizational health. And so I would actually be for, it's okay if we want to separate those or categorize those differently, but I still think there should be room for council to weigh in that regard. So I don't know if I want to get rid of that completely. And then I really like the idea of quarterly tracking on the projects. I think that should be a minimum, and I'm hoping that there can be a process for more frequent updates. I imagine that if a department head wanted to give an update on a project, our city manager should be the person that signs off on that before council reviews it, but maybe there's a process where those updates could come a bit more frequently, just because I know that I'm always interested in what's going on. And I don't want to schedule any more one-on-ones with the city manager than I have to because I know she's a very busy person. And then as it relates to specific projects, I felt pretty good about what was presented in the draft strategic roadmap. I don't think that QC 18+19, the partnering with HARD and HOSD for community spaces really reflects the full scope of what was written in that project. I think part of the goal of that project was to have an open campus concept. Maybe we open Tennyson High after hours and we do that as a partnership with HARD and HOSD. It really is a multi-agency endeavor, and I know that there's support, and if I'm not mistaken, it was the project that got the highest amount of points, which I think was mathematically impossible for doing we got 15 points, there's only 7 of us. So I don't know how that happened, but it got a lot of points. And I just want to make sure that project actually reflects the will of the council since it was arguably the most popular of the night. NC10 around AC Transit, it's not just about beautifying bus shelters, it's also about constructing more bus seats. Shelters are more expensive than benches, but I just want to clarify that we're trying to improve the ridership experience by making sure that more stops have seating. And then lastly, EC2 for the cabaret and business license ordinance. Part of the language was around, it was just cabaret ordinance and maybe one other thing. But I remember in a recent staff report, it had mentioned that our business license ordinance is also out of date. And the intent of that project was more, surfacing ordinances that economic development feels is outdated or needs to be revisited. So the cabaret ordinance might be one of those, but I don't want to just limit it to that. I want to kind of rely on our staff here to raise any other ordinances that relate to economic development that may need to be revisited or haven't been visited in over a decade or so. And otherwise, I think that's it for me. Thank you again for a great job on this project, and I'm really excited for council and staff to embark on these. Thank you.
Can I give a brief comment back on that?
Yes.
Thanks. First of all, you reminded me to thank so Irene Perez and Emily Huang, who sit in the back with me, who you guys I think have all met now, did most of the work on trying to create these documents for you. So I want to give them a lot of props for working on that so hard. And so they tried to shorten these to make them a little more digestible, but we can go back and revisit those three that you mentioned.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you, because I can imagine if this was so crazy for us to digest in a quick period of time, I can only imagine the whirlwind that was happening in the background. So thank you very much for trying to present this to us in multiple different ways. Actually, I appreciate that. So as far as the vision statement, yeah, I'm kind of with Councilmember Syrup. When I read through the longer one, I thought, well, maybe it is good to keep that somewhere, as some sort of full description of what our vision is. But I also like the first option, and I would, to Councilmember Zemania's point, I would add just the first sentence of the environmental paragraph that's in the longer vision statement. I think that would do it, because it speaks to that, to both environment and environmental justice. Let's see. So I think that's on so the number one, adding the sentence on the education city lens. Yeah, I really appreciate the wording that you put in there to add the community partners and business partners to sort of make it clear that what we're trying to do is work with our educational institutions and our larger community to help people get educated, get jobs, and move on from there. So I like the way the wording came out, and I am comfortable with the education city lens the way it is. Thank you. As far as the roadmap projects, yeah, it's so hard to look at it because I still had a question about, for example, the affordable housing ordinance got 6 points or something, but I assume that work is still happening. Is that right? Because it was really low prioritized, but I mean, that has to, updating the affordable housing ordinance must be happening. What number? Let me see what number it was.
We just updated it.
Okay, so is that why, why is it on there? Is that for the future? It's because it was...
I think that... Yeah, I don't think staff put that on there unless there's some additional reason why the council would like us to look at it again.
No, that's why it was H9, continue work on updating the affordable housing ordinance.
Yeah, so I think it actually was re-added by council last year. They wanted an update and us to revisit and look at it. It was added to the strategic. So staff kind of had on their work plan, I guess in fiscal year 24 we'll come back with a revisited. But because this new council said, it's okay, this is not the top priority for the housing team. Okay. They're actually not going to revisit it for a couple of years. Probably you won't see it.
Okay,
yeah. So to answer your question, the voting did help them say okay, maybe we can work on some of these other really important things that you guys did prioritize for the housing team.
Okay. Because, I think there were still some things that we sort of ignored because we thought, well, that's going to happen in the background anyway. So I appreciate your comments about what will happen next year when this comes back, that you'll show us what really needs to be happening and what's already in the work versus what we can add on. And then the other one, too, Councilmember Syrup's point about the hard language, I agree. I think that there was a slightly different version of that maybe if you go back and look at the notes, that'll help because... my idea with that was, that we would look at, talking with HARD and talking with the school district about opening campus just for, play, for neighborhood play, basically. So I'm not sure, because my vision of that is I'm not sure why we need staffing. I mean, I think I've said this before, but in other cities, the campuses are just open. There's no staff there. There's no one there. It's just a playground, basically, after hours. So how we can make that happen in Hayward, I think would be...
Let's pray.
would be wonderful. Yeah, yeah. And then, okay, so now back to the list here. And then the budget priorities. Sorry, Councilor Sarah, but I actually really want to see this gateway sign updated. It's been, it was my first communication to the city when I first moved here. I don't know, when was that, 2003 or something? Because I've always thought it does not represent Hayward, and it has like a sort of a negative feeling to it, I think. And so I wanted to see this thing replaced since 2003. So this is like way beyond when I would want to see it replaced. So putting it off again to me, for me, it doesn't even match our new sort of kind of gateway where the flags are and everything. Like that all looks really modern and updated. And when our first experience, I would rather just see it torn down. And then, if we could put some up later, fine, because we do have a nice entry to Hayward once you come under the bridge. So something with that, I definitely want to see that continue to be a priority. And yeah, I mean, of course, expanding letter services is always a priority for me. But I don't know what to say about that. Yeah, I think we do need to continue with that. It's really hard when you're presented with 5 options to say I want to cut any of these things, because I think they're all important. I guess my one question about the consulting services for the 360 evaluations, if we're lacking in some of the staff that would need to be evaluated under this, would this be something we might want to wait on going forward?
In terms of like if there's a staff vacancy?
Yeah, I mean, how many people under this, if it's the executive coaching for department heads, how many department heads are we?
13.
And how are any of those vacant at this point?
We have, our police chief is out on leave,
Just
but yeah, that's
okay.
it.
All right, so never mind. That's actually a bad point then. Yeah, I don't know.
Can I talk, maybe I just want to bring up the high-speed internet conversation again. I was just texting with our IT director. So I just want to be clear, there are options in downtown for higher speed internet. Businesses have to pay to upgrade to do it. And so Comcast has offered that there are some financial packages that they can provide to help businesses do the upfront installation. So there are options available. It's just you have to pay for them. And so I think that's where, like there may be some areas in the industrial area where we actually don't have those options, but in downtown there are high-speed options available.
Sorry, I don't know if this is the right venue to go into the weeds about it, but oftentimes the options that are available to those individual customers include the cost of the construction or the groundbreaking that they have to do. And so you're looking at $1,200 a month, which isn't tenable for a small business because the cost of that construction is part of the package. And so it's a utilities approach that I'm hoping we can explore, not just you're on your own.
Yeah, and I think we have a liaison at Comcast that they have some programs for smaller businesses where they can provide some financial assistance with that. So I think that I don't know that we need, if the council was uncomfortable spending all of that money right now, that might be something we push out and then just continue that exploration and provide that resource, say at Comcast or other companies where let's look at maybe we do through economic development just grants like we do with the facade and improvements. Like if you want higher speed internet, economic development can kind of help with a grant for some of those upfront installation costs. That might be an easier way to get there if the council's uncomfortable spending the money on the consultant services this year.
Thank you. And just 2 final thoughts. On the gateway thing, I also wanted to just keep a plug in for that one because my understanding is we're doing beautification along that roadway anyway along Jackson, and so to me they can go hand in hand, which is why I think we coupled them in the on the strategic roadmap. So I'd like to see that continue. And finally, to Councilmember Zemania's request and about the downtown businesses, it sounds like that's going to start in 2025 from what Mary said. Is that right? The work on updating the downtown ordinance, I think.
For the ordinance, yeah. So, and I want to clarify. I was just looking back on my notes. So, economic development and code are they're going to go out and do a lot more education and engagement in this coming year in the downtown. They're focusing really on the downtown and working with the property owners. So they are going to be putting staff hours into that, but you wouldn't see a revised ordinance with more enforcement under the current proposal until fiscal year 25, and that's just for staff capacity reasons.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love your, but I'm comfortable waiting for the process to happen. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Thomas, for your work, and thank your staff for this work. It was very organized. I enjoyed the consultant and keeping us brief during that day. I think they did a really good job managing us, and thank you, Mayor, for managing us that day as well. For the first question on the vision statement, I'm okay with a longer version, and I do like city staff have what they need to thrive in their work and take pride in helping Hayward continually improve. I like that in both of them they have this line, so I'm glad that they're in both options, because I do think city staff is very important for us to get the work done, so I'm happy to see that they're in the vision statement as well. The education city lens, I'm fine with the education city lens. I think my issue is just understanding the deliverable, but long as we know that this is something that we're looking at projects with and that we're ticking off a box that says this applies, then I'm fine with it. As far as the budget needs, I do feel like we need to have a ticketing system for tracking requests, so definitely keep that on. The consultant services, I'm fine with having a 360, but if this is something that needs to be revisited, if we are looking at cost, I'm fine with revisiting that one. The gateway sign removal, I feel like Councilmember Roche, this is important. Our Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force highlighted this as a particular issue. We need to show that in this particular part of the city that we are investing in them just the same as South Hayward and downtown. It is an equity issue for me, for them not to have a monument sign that shows that we are looking at your community too. So I am going to advocate for that. And then broadband consultant services, I'm fine with the economic development approach. I appreciate the city manager for bringing that up, because I hear mixed things when I hear about downtown and their internet services. I hear a small business who says his internet is fine. I've reached out to him asking, was it expensive? No. And then I hear from other, businesses that it's terrible. Well, how come that person across the street told me that their internet was fine? I don't understand that. So I will be fine with having a consultant looking at what's happening downtown versus what's happening in the industrial sector for a minimum scope of what that consultant would do, and then offering those grants from the economic development department. So if we can do some kind of combo of that, but $300,000 is a lot to understand what a business needs to do to have a business. So I think we can help, but we need to understand that. And then contract with organizations. The number one thing people complain about in our city is trash, probably. And so it's not just about expanding litter collection. Organizations like Downtown Streets Team is a job reentry program that helps them do other things. It provides gift cards for them to get meals and basic needs. So I would still like to entertain that, because that is the consistent help we get from the community to keep our city clean. Keep Hayward Clean and Green is a task force with volunteers that begs the community to come out and help clean. This group comes out and cleans, and it's guaranteed. So I think we should definitely revisit the importance of services like this. So I'm going to say I would prioritize litter collection, Jackson Gateway sign, and everything else after that. So the complete opposite of some of my members. I'm sorry about that, but we can find a balance. Okay, and then as far as projects, Q1 Heart, I'm happy to see all of our council members, well, most of our council members want to keep prioritizing that. The dispatch needs as well. As far as Heart, I am going to keep asking, because other communities have figured this out. 24 hours. So I know it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but Antioch figured it out yesterday. So we need to look at that. Q8/Q22 with the empty storefronts. I am with Council Member Germano on the storefronts. I see that my public art was not prioritized, so maybe we can have some public art with those empty storefronts. We can look into that possibly. Q15, just wanted to confirm, Q15 is already happening. That's one of the reasons why it wasn't prioritized. I believe it's the art for.
Correct. That's
it's already prioritized.
That's already and it's already underway. We've got
it. Okay, just wanted to say that for the community in case they were wondering why it got a lower score. I already talked about broadband, and then the same with Q22, Russell City, restorative justice. That's because it's already prioritized, so that's why it received a low score. Okay. Thank you for QC9 for background checks and prioritizing that for us for guns. QC21, I think we already spoke about that regarding the litter collection. H1 regarding the support of St. Regis, and we did have a caller regarding St. Regis. We had a community meeting already regarding St. Regis, correct?
So we haven't had any broad community meetings.
Okay.
We had a community meeting last week with the Bret Hart School community, which is directly adjacent. It was pretty sparsely attended, only a handful of attendees. Not huge concerns about the project. We are anticipating that over the course of the next year, we will be working and having conversations with different community groups and stakeholders about the project to make sure that we hear concerns that can be incorporated into the development of the project. Just a reminder that this project is a use that is allowed within the current zoning and within the current site, so it will not be coming to any level of staff, planning commission, or city council approval. It's a use that's allowed by right. But we do understand the concerns that may be present around that, and I think that's why we're anticipating over the coming months having a number of community conversations and meetings with different stakeholder groups.
Okay, great. And then HC10, thank you, Councilmember Syrup, on prioritizing BART. And wanted to see, is there anything we can do in the interim while we're trying to do some kind of activation of these spaces as we wait to figure out what's happening with housing? Is there something we can do similar to Black Cultural Zone or something that we can partner with them in order to see some of the more nefarious activities that happen at BART station parking lots that we can try to mitigate?
Let's talk after.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got it. All right. And then C11, HASPA update. I believe City Manager, we are looking to have an update to all of council regarding the Shoreline Master Plan. And just wondering, how do we expedite getting more regional support or funding to expedite projects for that?
Yes, and I think Councilmember Andrews and I had talked, and we had talked about doing a work session for the entire council on the Shoreline Master Plan and HASPA, and kind of probably in the fall, early fall, just to kind of as educational and for the community about the work that's been going on out there. I think HASPA has already started to expand to include different members in that JPA. That's one of the ways. And then I think we're going to need to continue to look at sort of regional funding and other mechanisms for funding some of those improvements.
Okay. And then I also wanted to lastly highlight that we did reduce some of the numbers of miles of pipe for water and sewer to allow for just a better success rate in terms of improving our infrastructure. But I also hope that we still maintain our level of replacement that is going to help our community, but also allow Public Works to focus on the needs in other areas where we're getting complaints on or need to address. So just wanted to highlight that. And also we did have a lot of council members who are interested in evaluating the downtown loop and just making sure that we are realistic with our approach when we evaluate it. I know there's some council members, former council members, who have spent a lot of energy on that topic, but we still have community concerns about it. So I'm hoping that we can find some kind of approach that will show that we are listening to them, but we also have to do things that we know that we need to have partners in it, and we can't just do this rogue. So we got to figure out what approach we're going to do with it, even though this received a high number in terms of support. So that's all. Thanks.
I saw that Councilmember Cermeño had raised his hand again, but what I'd like to do is, can I call on Councilmember Goldstein first, and then get everyone to have a chance, and then I'll call you again. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of work in such a short period of time, so kudos to your staff. I like the option one with that modification that Council members Cermeño and Roach advised, taking that first sentence on green. The education lens, by the way, the longer one does have some appeal to it. My only objection to it is it's really long, but it does kind of read like a history lesson of the city. So it does have some value. Maybe we got to tuck that away somewhere. The education lens, I have no disagreement with it. I think it's a great start. I do like the edits that Councilmember Bonilla Jr. had recommended. On the fiscal impact page, in some sense, all of these things are necessary. I like the gateway sign replacement idea and the broadband because those are, in fact, not only resident impacting, but business impacting. And whatever we do that can enhance our business community has a direct benefit to our whole community. It's the sales tax revenues and property taxes that pay the bills. And so anything that we can do to enhance business, I think we ought to be looking at. I really don't understand at this point, because I've managed to work myself into a state of confusion over exactly what these consultant services are intending to do relative to broadband. And maybe today isn't the place to go into depth on that, but if you can help me untwist my brain.
So what staff heard at the last conversation was an update to the fiber master plan that we did 3 or 4 years ago. And so that was what we had sort of put as a rough estimate for a budget for a consultant, to bring on a consultant to update that master plan that we had done 2019, 2017? I can't remember which year it was. But so basically to update that with current conditions and to see where there were gaps, what opportunities are there available. And that's a citywide look, not just downtown or the industrial area.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's probably something we ought to continue with, but because of the wide availability of fairly low-cost, high-speed wireless internet services, maybe that's something that economic development can reach out to those businesses that are complaining about broadband and maybe offer some temporary solution while we continue to build out the master plan. And I also agree with the litter collection services. I think my objection to visiting downtown is it's grimy. And I know when we had the downtown streets team down there pressure washing, it really made a difference. And I don't know if you guys have that same kind of reaction to the street grime, but I don't think I'm crazy when I say it's a turnoff. And I think we need to keep it clean to make it appealing. And I have heard from the business, the property owners and some of the businesses downtown. And part of the issue about bringing new businesses down there, part of it's the griminess, part of it is the population of unhoused folks who literally take up residence in the doorways. And it's, part of that is some folks are afraid, but others are just, turned off by the presence. They just don't want to be around it. And so our solution to that is to support having BACs open the St. Regis as soon as possible, as well as potentially expanding the heart team services. We have to continue to press forward on that front, or we're going to keep losing ground. Rather than attracting new businesses, they're just going to keep staying away. So if you notice in our industrial areas, we have pretty good, in fact, I would say very good amount of attraction, businesses that are coming, and pretty good retention. We could probably do a little bit better as a city, working on the retention component of it. But downtown seems to have kind of a special aversion, and it shouldn't. I mean, it's charming. It's such a nice area, and with just a little bit of work, I think we can make it a grand slam down there. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilmember Zermenio.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that mine is a yes on the educational component. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. So vision statement, in an era where I am asking for less, not more, option one is good, but I have to agree with Councilmember Syrup. I'm sort of attached to that, to the lengthier one. I think for publication purposes, we can go to option one. I like less words, but if we had special 11 or 8.5 by 11 frames made, maybe we can have the longer vision statement on our desks, because I think there is something, and I think the comment you made, Councilmember Syrup, was sort of constructing the city, and I think that's I think that's something that we should keep on our forefront, and because we are building something, and it's as we sort of build this sort of future. It's nice to have, 25 words, sort of hold us together. But I think sometimes it's appropriate to kind of go back to a document that says, where do we get these 25 words and sort of where does that take us? So anyways, option one, but let's keep the longer version, at least for reference. And Education City lens, absolutely. I do like some of the edits. I went and revisited the language, and I think it was Councilmember Bonilla who had some language clarification, and I had clarified some language last night, and I have also had some other eyes sort of take a look at this, and I'll just sort of read them here, but I'll email them to you so you can just cut and paste. But the first thing is using the word pathways instead of pipelines. Pathways is it's a vernacular that's being used more so today when we talk about education to career pathways and workforce development and stuff. So anyways, I think that's a great point. The first sort of question, or the first lens that we, or what would you call it, like an aperture, I guess? I don't know what the technical term is that it would be this, is, how will this service, project, or policy support or expand educational and or economic opportunities for people in Hayward? How are we collaborating with partners to facilitate and develop educational and employment pathways accessible to all Hayward youth and resistance. And I think that was something that you had mentioned, and so I thought that was a nice nuance that you picked up. The second question is, under the third question would be, let's see, it would be, here is how, oh wait, this is, how are we communicating? And I think this is something that you brought up, Councilmember Bonilla. How are we communicating education and economic opportunities in and around Hayward to Hayward families? And what barriers do we need to remove for people to access this information? And so there's that. And then lastly, you know, there's this sort of component of are people better off after we, you know, used this lens or implemented this, you know, either store or development or something, but is how will we know this service, project, or policy is improving educational and or economic opportunities for Hayward youth and residents? And so those are three sort of maybe tightened up questions that I would sort of suggest out there, and I'll email these to you, and you can certainly tweak as we move on. But I also wanted just to say thank you to my colleagues for supporting this, and you know I just wanted to, not to sort of belabor this, but you know over the last 3 weeks, there have been 3 huge significant partnerships that have really come to fruition that I think are really, you know, quintessential examples of this sort of education city lens. One is, you know, the firehouse, Station 6. I mean, here is a, you know, this multi-million-dollar project that is a partnership between the city, you know, Chabot College, and ROP. And I mean, and let's not we forget, and I know I have the former finance director with us here, and they even helped us pay for it, right? I mean, what better lens could we have used for this project? You know, on Friday, we broke ground for the Covenant House. You know, here was a project where we had the school district, the city, a nationally known, recognized nonprofit that serves foster kids, unaccompanied minors, and homeless kids. And so here's a project that includes all these partners: faith community, school district, the city, in the Covenant House. Is incredible. And then lastly, just one other example is, you know, this company that just opened in Hayward back in February that council members Goldstein and Syrup and I went to, Icon. You know, here's a company that is using this incredible microscopy technology, and it's a space where researchers from surrounding universities, particularly Cal State East Bay, will be able to come to you know, Icon and do, you know, this incredibly sophisticated research in, you know, in this area that they're doing. So, you know, we're already doing this work, and so it's just now we get to use this lens and see it as for what it is. And so I just wanted to highlight that. So thank you. Let's see. The work plan. You know, I agree generally with, you know, with everybody up here. That's not my easy way out to make friends up here. But you know, I say that because. And I might have brought this up to the city manager when we were actually participating in this process at our retreat. You know, while we went through this exercise and we put the dots up and all of that, which is great, at the back of my mind, I could not help but to think about the citywide survey or the neighborhood survey that we're going to be using, or sort of that we're going to be conducting in the fall. And I just wanted us to sort of be mindful of what comes back in that community survey, in this, you know, neighborhood survey, that basically takes us in another direction. So I appreciate being mindful of sort of mid-year budget checks, mid-year plan checks, because we may have to adjust some of these things. If neighborhoods are telling us to go in one direction, we're going to have to really, pay attention to that. So but with that said, and so that's why I'm sort of agreeing with everybody up here, because, everything that we're doing up here, I think, is in line with our priorities and our strategic roadmap, and I think it's great. I just wanted to highlight the downtown focus. Absolutely. I think, that was something that we all talked about I believe, on all of our campaigns. We talked about a focus on downtown cleanliness. And so that was a major factor. Budget needs. I have to, I was gonna, the gateway sign removal and replacement, yes, absolutely. For a very long time, and I know Councilmember Cermeño was up here when we had a lot of these conversations around gateways, not only improving our gateways, but we've incredibly invested a lot in our gateways. Our Fairway Park Gateway, the 238 corridor project, right? The Fairway Park Gateway. Now we're in the middle of, now we're about to launch phase 3 of the Mission Boulevard 238 corridor, and that's the gateway through the downtown or to the downtown. And so, I don't want to let that go. And I have to agree with, Councilmember Goldstein about, or I don't know whether it was Councilmember Andrews who's talked about, $300,000 for consultant services around broadband. And I understand what the city manager said about going back and revisiting the fiber plan. I get that. But I think, right now, in this time in history, I don't think revisiting the fiber plan, it would be would be worth our time right now. I think what we need is, we got to get downtown connected. We got to get it connected. We got to make sure businesses are fully, functional with good, high quality broadband, whether we partner with Comcast and so forth, whether we help, support businesses with, either grants or loans or whatever. Let's do that. But I don't know if, I don't know if revisiting the fiber plan will take us to what we need to do, and especially if we're trying to really put our focus in downtown and clean it up and bring back more retail and so forth. Okay, let's see, and I believe, that was it. And in terms of all the projects, I think I already talked about that, and I think that is it. Unless nobody has anything else to say. Does Ms. Thomas, do you have everything you need from us?
Yeah, I'm going to quickly summarize what I heard back so that because you guys will see this again in 2 weeks with the budget. We got one more.
Oh, before you summarize, I just heard a whisper that Councilmember Andrews has one more thing to say.
And I know we've been talking about this, city manager and I have been talking about this, but understanding events and coordination of events, staffing of events, and how we interact with groups, confirming budgets, whether it's through community services, the city, all that, I think we need to prioritize as part of this roadmap as well, because it is causing a lot of confusion for folks. So we'd love to have that iron out next year. And I think we do have some things internally that we can move around and make it happen, but just want to highlight it as a priority.
I have a small whisper I want to add to.
Yeah, Councilmember Syro.
Thank you. I agree with what Councilmember Andrews said, and I was really happy to see the inclusion of exploring public arts staff, and I'm wondering if maybe as part of that priority it also is public arts and events, and just maybe that's the scope of that exploration, if that makes sense. And then I also appreciate the back and forth we had around broadband. I want to clarify that I'm not wedded to $300,000 for a consultant, especially if it's just to update a master plan. My interest is in not being afraid of allocating a bit of money to help get our businesses connected downtown. So just wanted to clarify the intent and not necessarily it has to be specifically what was presented here tonight.
Okay. And then Ms. Thomas, if you're going to dare, Therese, to summarize everything we said.
Yeah,
Right.
so as brief as I can. So for the vision statement, you guys are supportive of option one. We will include both in the budget document for a formal record, but for any communications externally, we will use the shorter version. And then for the Education City, we're good with moving it. I am going to get some edits from the mayor. I took down the notes of what you said, Councilmember Bonilla, so we will all include those. For the projects, I basically am not hearing too much, like we're going to move forward the way it is. However, I will, for the one around enforcement of vacant buildings and for the safe parking, I will ask the staff to provide just a paragraph update in the next staff report so that you guys can see a little bit more information on that. And then for the budget, I heard you had enough votes for all of them except for the broadband. It sounds like maybe it's better for us to come back with a report that has some options for you to consider with the budget ask in that report. Okay. All right.
Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. Just to be clear on the vision statement that you'll add that sentence on the environment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I will add that sentence.
Okay. Council members, I believe we had a successful work session. So if there's no other items, thank you, Ms. Thomas. Thank you, Madam City Manager. So I will close this. Oh, no, I'm going to close this item. And then, but thank you, though. I will close this item, move on to council reports and announcements. And are there any reports or announcements from council? Let me move back to my thing. Seeing none. Seeing none. Did you have something?
Yeah, in addition to.
Okay. Okay, but no, I haven't got to the referral yet.
It's just separate.
Okay, go right ahead.
I just want to thank Hayward PD for a successful catalytic converter event.
Yes.
The HPD's there. Thank you. Going to give you all a shout out. We had, I believe, 64 cars that were stamped and identified that will help with hopefully people who are experiencing this issue get it returned back to Hayward PD, because people who are accepting these should not accept them if they see that Hayward PD stamp on it. I hope to do it again with Hayward PD because it really shows the community that we're trying to be proactive. So just wanted to thank them for that, and I had a good time.
Yes, I wanted to mention that same thing. My mom, who is in her mid-85-year-old woman, she called, made an appointment, drove by herself, waited in line, took care of it on her own, and on her way home, or when she got home, she called me and she said it was the easiest, most simple process that she went through. So, so great job. Please tell your colleagues, thank you very much, and I appreciate that. Okay. Any other comments? Councilmember Goldstein.
I almost forgot, but on Saturday, I had the privilege and opportunity of taking the Hayward Police Department motorcycle ride safety class. It was an all-day class. There were about 35 people there, and they came from all over. There were people from Brentwood and Fremont, anyway, from all around. And we all had a lot of fun, but more importantly, we learned life-saving skills of how to operate our motorcycles. And I've got a 940-pound touring bike, and I think some people were kind of impressed that I was really pushing the limits to get that bike to turn in circles that are difficult to do. And I was impressed with the motor officers' level of training. They were hitting some very precise recommendations that I had not gotten in other classes that actually made it possible for me to do some things on that bike that were difficult, but with proper training, very good. And by the way, I have taken classes in the past and have actually used what I learned. And I think one of those times when I used it did actually save my life. I was driving near Berkeley on the freeway, and a truck just decided that it was more important for him to straddle 2 lanes than it was for him to look and see the motorcycles that might be lane splitting, which, by the way, is perfectly legal in the state of California. And in any event, he was maybe 3 or 4 car lengths in front of me, and I had to use my best skill. I remember thinking, I have to do this right or I could die. And I was able to do that. Well, this class was that kind of training, how to save your skin when it really matters. And so, first of all, I want to thank Hayward PD for putting that on. I want to thank all of everyone that was involved in the budget decision to authorize that training. And I would officially like to also invite anyone that is able to attend in the future to do so. It's an excellent class. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we have a council referral, and this is city council referral, use of council member funds for reimbursement related to Juneteenth, Hayward coordination, and I believe this report is coming to us by way of council member Andrews and council member Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. I am requesting funds to go towards Juneteenth Hayward. Funds would be either for banners or boards that will explain the history of Juneteenth. That's something that we're adding this year for June 15th, 5:30 to 8:30. Also, it could be used for sponsoring nonprofits. Some nonprofits have reached out to me regarding needing sponsorship to set up a booth, so I would love to use it for either one of those. And then, of course, I will submit reimbursable, submit receipts for it to be reimbursed to prove that it will be for one of these items here. And then this is within my authority, I guess, but I have to come to council to request the funds, but it is part of our council member handbook guidelines. So just wanted to see if I can get approval, and I thank Council Member Roche for signing on to this referral.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. I want to first open it up for questions up here on the dais, and it looks like we have Council Member Roach.
Thank you. I just want to thank Councilmember Andrews for her leadership on this. I'm more than happy to support this referral. I think it's an easy ask, and I just think it's a really important and joyful event that Councilmember Andrews has brought to Hayward, and I think we need to do everything we can to support it, to keep it going as an annual event. So thank you, Councilmember Andrews.
Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you. I just wanted to express my appreciation for you making Juneteenth more than just a holiday in name, but a cause for celebration in Hayward and a hub for culture. I had a question for staff just around process, and I think this is something we might work out in our ad hoc committee around the council handbook. But maybe just, would somebody mind clarifying how the expense process works currently, just so I understand it?
So there, in the council handbook, there's already a list of pre-authorized expenses. And so travel and training for city-related business, conferences, books, publications. So anytime a council member makes or wants to use their council funds for any of those items, you can either pay for it yourself and request reimbursement, or you can ask a staff member to make the reservation for you if it's for travel, for example, and then put it on the city credit card, and it will be expensed towards your council budget. There's a sort of catch-all category, which is like other expenses, and that's where you would sort of come to the council and say, I would like to use my council office budget for X. And then that's where you would have to get the pre-authorization before spending it, if it's not on the existing list.
Understood. And so a referral is the best way to bring that request.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I was just trying to understand the process. I'm excited for the event.
Councilmember Bonilla.
I also want to thank Councilmember Andrews for her leadership with this and this event. I'm really looking forward to it. Just out of curiosity, Councilmember Andrews, how many nonprofit booths do you think we'll be able to sponsor with your $1,000? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
not
like you're
many.
really stretching a penny here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's about 6 booths, but I have way more asking for sponsorship. So myself and Supervisor Marquez have done a lot of fundraising for this event. So this will help reduce some of our fundraising efforts.
excellent. In the future, I wouldn't mind using some of my council budget for something like this. So great, great referral tonight, and
you.
I think we're all looking forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Zermania.
Yes, I join my colleagues in congratulating and thanking you for doing this. And as a matter of fact, I am purchasing a booth for HASPA. So HASPA will be there in my booth because I represent the city in HASPA, and I told the group, nobody knows what HASPA is. So it's just, are you guys interested in having a booth? Oh, we didn't. They really had not thought about it. So they're very happy that they will be at the city. They'll have the logo and et cetera, and hand that information. So it's one way to support it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to close council comments, open up for public comment. Is there anybody online, or is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a public comment to this? Seeing none online and seeing nobody in the chamber, I'd like to close public comments, and I'll open up for a motion.
I'll move the item.
Moved by Councilmember Goldstein.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Roach. And I just wanted to also share my colleagues' congratulatory comments. Thank you very much for bringing this to Hayward. And if it passes, I'm sure you'll do a fine job with your allocation. Madam City Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Thank you to my colleagues for supporting this event. We're going to have it Juneteenth, June 15th, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. There's also a blues festival, June 17th, all day at City Hall Plaza, and you can go to juneteenthhayward.com for more info.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Yes.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Yes.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Sarup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? And Mayor Salinas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item unanimously passes. Congratulations. Our next meeting is June 6, 2023 at 7 p.m. And if there are no other business this evening, thank you very much. And Mr. Sergeant at Arms, I got out of here at 9:31. Be safe tonight, sir.
Record.